So I'm talking about the path of vulnerability today. You know, at home office, they give us a list of all the topics for the year. And as ministers, we get to choose them or not. And there are some I choose and some, don't really fit. But this one did. Because I think vulnerability, when we can be vulnerable in our lives, it actually creates an opening. It creates a doorway to greater spiritual growth. Can you feel that? Those moments when you're vulnerable, how that happens? Yeah. And of course, Brené Brown, I gotta talk about Brené Brown because she has studied and researched vulnerability so extensively. So I went back and I watched her TED Talk, which was like 15 years ago. I can't believe it's been that long since she did that talk. And she talks about how vulnerability is the birthplace. It's the birthplace of creativity. It's the birthplace of joy. It's the birthplace of love. It's the birthplace of gratitude. And she talks about how we live in this vulnerable world. We really do, yeah? And how we numb it. We numb vulnerability because it's hard to be vulnerable. In an interview, she was asked, is vulnerability about self-disclosure? Isn't that what it's about? About sharing all of our stuff? And she said, no, that's actually not what it's about at all. She said that vulnerability is about those moments when we are uncertain. Those moments when there is risk involved. Those moments when we feel exposed. And then we lean into the discomfort of that. The willingness to hang out in the discomfort, in those cringing moments. You know, the ones, those cringing moments, to just be with that. And she also said that, when we're in that vulnerable place, we have the tendency to armor up. Yeah? You feel the armor when it starts to come up? Yeah, like a transformer? Yeah, and so we do this. We all do this. We do it to protect ourselves. Because vulnerability can be scary. So we do it to protect ourselves, but it costs us something. It costs us love. It costs us creativity. It costs us joy. It costs us peace every time we do that. So part of our spiritual work is to recognize the masks that we wear, to recognize the armor that we are walking around with, to recognize it when it's there. Ram Dass, the wonderful spiritual teacher Ram Dass, he talks about masks, the masks that we wear, and he would call them the space suit. We walk around with these space suits through our life, and we do that to deal with life. Yeah? He used the mask and the spacesuit as a metaphor to describe the social identities that we walk around with, to describe the roles and the costumes that we wear when we are out in the world. We may not wear those costumes with our cat, with our pets at home, or with those who know us and love us unconditionally. But typically when we are out in the world, we put on those costumes. We put on those spacesuits. Yeah. And so he taught that true spiritual freedom involves taking off the masks, involves taking off the spacesuit, so that we can reveal our authentic self. And what that does is it allows us to have a heart-to-heart, soul-to-soul connection with another. And it allows us to recognize our shared consciousness. Our shared consciousness. When we are willing to take off the masks, when we are willing to step out of the spacesuits like the astronauts did this week. Yeah. So we can't fully recognize and really be with another human being until we do that. Vulnerability requires us to release our false self so that the divine within us can emerge, can be brought forth. Our true divine self exists behind the mask, behind the armor. That's where it's there. You know, our divine self doesn't need to mask up. It doesn't need to wear any armor. It just wants to shine its light. That's all that it wants to do. It's what it came here to do. In our philosophy, The Science of Mind, it teaches that there is something within us, within all of us, that is untouched. Untouched by uncertainty, untouched by fear, untouched by comparison, untouched by the feelings of not being good enough. This is the place where spirit is, the place where spirit dwells. Ernest Holmes, our founder, he said, there is something within you beyond all doubt and fear. Something which has never been limited by your acts or destroyed by your feeling. This is the only something that can make you whole. It is the only something that can make you whole. I think we create these masks and these false ways of being because on some level we don't believe that we are whole. Or really what I think is that we have just forgotten that we are whole. So what Ernest Holmes is saying is there's this aspect within each one of us that knows it's whole. Untouched by any doubts, untouched by any circumstances, untouched by any fear. It recognizes and knows its wholeness. The wholeness that we are is there waiting to be expressed. And so we are invited. It's an invitation. An invitation for all of us to take off the mask, and some of us wear more than one, so there's a lot of layers there. Yeah? Maybe just take off one. Step out of the spacesuit. Release the armor so that the divine can express itself, or rather, reveal itself through and as us. Through and as us. Because that's where the light is. And our light wants to shine. It came here to shine, not to be hidden away. Vulnerability is that place where grace enters. It's where healing begins. It's where awakening happens. That's where it happens. But we have to trust. You know that word. We have to trust. We have to surrender. How often do you hear that little voice? Sometimes it's screaming at you, sometimes just maybe a soft whisper. Trust. Allow. Surrender. Trust. Allow. Surrender. Let's just take a deep breath. And let's say it out loud together. Trust, allow, surrender. Again, trust, allow, surrender. One more time. Trust, allow, surrender. In order to trust, allow, and surrender, we have to let go. We have to let go of control. Not so easy, is it? And allow ourselves to be seen for all that we are, and for something we used to say in the Landmark education days, for those that have done Landmark, for all that we are and for all that we are not. allow ourselves to be seen for all that we are and for all that we are not. To trust that if we allow ourselves to be seen, that we are not going to fall apart, that the world around us is not going to come crashing down. You know, it takes a lot of work to maintain that armor, doesn't it? It takes a lot of energy to keep putting that mask back on. It takes a lot of energy. And I'm not saying it's as easy as just taking it all off and just, hello world, I'm here. Because all of it has been built up over time, decades and decades. But are you willing to just take off one piece? One piece. Because it all keeps us from expressing our divine, true light, the light that we are. So we are being asked to release the need to be strong. We are being asked to release the need to appear strong. We are being asked to release the need to be in control. We are being asked to release the need to be perfect. We are being asked to release the need to have all the answers. I know some of you live in that world. I see some smiles and some, confirmation there. We are being asked to release all of the fear that keeps us from truly engaging with one another, which means we have to look into the people, into their eyes, and connect. Brené Brown discovered in her research, she interviewed hundreds of people over the course of 6 years, thousands of points of data she collected. And what she discovered is that the people who are vulnerable in their life, who are comfortable being vulnerable, they all had something in common, and that is courage. The definition of courage comes from the Latin word cur, and it means heart. And so basically, the original definition, what it's telling us is that these people who are comfortable with vulnerability, they have the courage to tell their story with their whole heart. Their whole heart. She called them wholehearted people. So it's not about telling your story from a wounded place, it's telling who you are from a wholehearted place. Very different. So what she discovered is that the people who are vulnerable, they had the courage to be imperfect. The courage to be imperfect. They had the compassion to be kind to themselves. They believed that what made them vulnerable made them beautiful. They didn't talk about being comfortable in their vulnerability. It was never comfortable, but they talked about it being necessary in order to express that wholehearted self in the world. They talked about the willingness to do something where there was no guarantee. The willingness to say, I love you first. The willingness to breathe through while waiting for the doctor to call after a biopsy. The willingness to invest in a relationship that may or may not work out. The willingness to call someone to make amends. This is a big one. The willingness to ask for help. The willingness to admit that we are scared. The willingness to love with our whole heart, even if there's no guarantee. Brené Brown said, vulnerability is hard, and it's scary, and it feels dangerous. But it's not as hard, scary, or dangerous as getting to the end of our lives and having to ask ourselves, what if I would have shown up? What if I would have shown up in that scenario over there, in that situation over there? What if I would have shown up? So I have a question for all of you to ponder here. What aspects of myself am I still holding? And what light could be revealed if I offer them humbly to love? Being vulnerable asks us to look at what we've been hiding. We cannot grow spiritually without it, without vulnerability. You know, we want, particularly in spiritual communities, we want everybody to think we got it all together. Yeah? Maybe that's just me. But you know, our culture hasn't trained us to be vulnerable. It hasn't trained us to live with authenticity. It's trained us to mask up. It's trained us to be numb. Because of the fear of not being good enough, because of the fear of not being loved. I came across, as I was preparing for my talk this week, I came across a wonderful conversation between the wonderful psychologist and Buddhist teacher Tara Brach and the amazing author Mark Nepo. What a great pairing. And they talked about that moment, you know, that moment in those quiet moments in our life where we realize and are willing to admit to ourselves when we were jealous, when we were afraid, when we're in fear, when we are just willing to admit something about ourselves that makes us feel a little uncomfortable. And that by simply admitting it, by simply recognizing it, it begins to shift. It begins to move and dissipate, and then we are able to step through a doorway that wasn't there before. Recently, I had a moment of jealousy myself, and it caught me off guard because it's not a feeling I normally experience. And as soon as I felt it, I wanted to just push it away. I'm a minister, I've done all this work, I shouldn't be feeling this, so I judged myself for that. And then I paused for a moment. And I sat with it. What is this about? Why is this coming up for me? And what I realized is that there was fear underneath it. Which anything that like this comes up for us, there's usually always fear there. And what came up for me was a fear of not being loved. A fear of not being good enough. And as I sat with that deeper feeling within me, it began to dissipate. As I integrated it, it dissipated. So vulnerability is about acknowledging our own woundings, acknowledging our own humanity. Not judging ourselves or making ourselves wrong or expecting ourselves to be these perfect spiritual people. Not expecting that we should know better, but instead saying, okay, I love you. I love you. It's okay to feel fear. It's okay to feel jealousy. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to feel rage. My God, at everything that's happening in our world. So to allow ourselves, to give ourselves full permission to feel it. And as we do that, it dissipates. It dissipates. And then what happens is this open-hearted place of acceptance shows up. The parts of ourself, you know, that need healing, they sneak up on us from time to time, don't they? But they come to the surface to be healed. They come to the surface to be met, to be seen, to be recognized, and to be loved. More important than anything else, to be loved. So again, what aspects am I still hiding? And what light could be revealed if I offer them humbly to love? Offering them humbly to love. Yes, vulnerability is about allowing ourselves to be seen by another, but it's also about allowing ourselves, seeing ourselves, really seeing ourselves, setting down that armor, taking off the mask, and allowing the light to be revealed through and as us. It takes courage. It takes courage to be vulnerable. The famous John Wayne had something to say about this. He said, "Courage is being scared to death and saddling up anyway." Don't you love that? I got it as a little coaster at a restaurant, and I have it on my bulletin board in my office. Vulnerability is the spirit within us wanting to express our light. There is this divine urge that wants to be expressed. So let's set down the armor. Let's step out of the spacesuit. And to recognize the wholeness that we are, to recognize our shared consciousness, our unity. Because the world needs that, does it not? To express our true, authentic self and be joyous about it. And one minute we might be able to take off the mask and the next we can't, and it's all okay. Keep loving yourself through this thing called life. We are all in this together. So placing your hands over your heart, let's move into a closing prayer. I'm going to ask our practitioners to please stand in high consciousness. And just taking a deep breath. And just feeling in this moment, trust, surrender, allow, trust, surrender, allow. Just feeling the vibration of these words in your heart. Trust, surrender, allow. And so I am knowing that each one of us, that as we continue to walk this earthly walk, that we are held always. That we remember that we are whole, just as we are. We are these whole and perfect and divine beings, here to move through these experiences in our life, and we are guided every step of the way, supported by Spirit, supported by that light that is within us. And so I am knowing that as we go out into the world this week, that we are allowing ourselves to perhaps be a little more vulnerable than we were the day before. That we are willing to recognize the armor, to recognize the masks, and to one by one take them off. To risk being that divine expression, to risk being that light in an even greater way for those around us and for the entire world. For we know that the world has been waiting for us. The world needs our light. It needs our love, and therefore I am knowing that as we tap into and touch into our vulnerabilities, that we are able to express our light in an even greater way. And that is something to be grateful for. That is something to celebrate. That is something to feel with great joy in our heart. And so with that, we release this. We hand it over to Spirit that always says yes. And we just say, thank you. Thank you, life. Thank you, Spirit. Thank you for the reminder of my wholeness. Thank you for the reminder of my wholeheartedness, for that is who we are and have always been. And so with that, we ground this in together by saying, and so it is.